All right, well, I've got 7, and it looks like we have a quorum. I think why don't we get rolling, and I think by the time that the rest of our guests arrive, we'll, hopefully be through our housekeeping things, approving minutes and so forth. So, Scott, if you could call the roll. Here?
Here.
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 All right. Mine is? Oh.
What is that red button for? Just to let you think you have the power.
Is that better? Yep.
Oh, yeah, that's much better. All right, good. Okay, so we have a quorum, so let's get rolling. Are there any changes to the agenda this evening?
No.
All right. Let's move to the approval of the minutes from previous meetings, and we had 2 meetings in September, and both of those sets of minutes are before us. Is there why don't we go ahead and take a motion to approve, and then during discussion we can work out any corrections.
I move to approve
Both sets?
both sets.
I'll second.
Okay,
Both sets.
great. Is there any discussion?
On the September 8th, under staff report, the first paragraph
Hello?
is a little confusing.
Hello?
Can you hear me? Okay.
I can hear you, but I'm not sure if you're mic'd.
Says it's on.
Yes,
I
I
got the
can
green
hear you.
light.
Let's move a little bit closer to it.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yeah?
So it's on the September 8th minutes under the communications staff report, that first paragraph. Just needs a little clarification. I didn't understand.
Do you have a proposed clarification?
No,
or
'cause I don't know what
Ah,
they
what
were
it
trying to
was.
say there. It just reads, Scott Test
I-
gave the monthly staff report that
I think
included
you may have the
progress
wrong number.
on the climate action plan, CAP Phase 2, highlighting the areas of a Greenbelt luncheon, development of green development standard opportunities, and strategies to improve the local on-site renewable energy market. That's what it's
It's a
supposed
long
to say.
sentence.
Okay,
Hello?
if
I think
that's
you
what
have
it's
the wrong
supposed to
number.
say, then fine.
Yeah.
I think it was the
Sort of.
word luncheon that threw me. And then development of a green development standard. All right.
You could use a little bit of straightening.
Okay, then I don't have any other comments.
Okay. Before we move forward to approve, did you want to suggest any?
No, I
Comments
mean,
or
if
other
everybody
wording
else is
or-
okay with it, I'm fine.
Okay. All right. Is there all those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right. Both sets of minutes are approved. And we'll move to public input. And I think if nobody objects, we'll just have our invited guests participate in our discussion throughout the meeting this evening. Are there any objections to that?
No.
All right. In that case, other than our invited guests, are there any members of the public who wish to address us tonight? Okay, seeing none, let's move to our communications. And Scott, if you could start with the staff report.
Good evening. First, Climate Action Plan Phase 2 progress. Under the
Hello.
renewable energy market goal, the Illinois Grow Solar Technical Assistance has released and now closed the request for quote for a bulk solar purchase program, and we'll discuss that tonight. In our goal to partner with existing groups, following a performance of the Pester Power Play, we're providing a series of sessions on the low carbon diet for students at the Urbana Adult Education facilities. And that session is earning the student attendees electives credit. On our sustainable water management plan, that plan continues implementation and has now been awarded a sustainability award from the Illinois State chapter of the American Planning Association. So we're glad to have that recognition. In regards to the Muhammad Aquifer stakeholders, the coalition who's been working to protect the aquifer from impacts from a potential landfill, of the 14 parties, 12 have signed a consent decree that would end the lawsuit in exchange for some additional protections from, in particular, actions from the landfill operator, which we've talked about in previous meetings. So 2 more communities, maybe there might have been one last night, and I think another in a week or so that's going to be voting on that consent decree. And our next meeting would be November 3rd at 7 p.m.
Great. Are there any questions or comments? Okay. I'm just going to pause briefly here because I think we had a couple more folks join us by phone. If we get, I think Marcia had already been on before we started. And who else do we have on the phone? I thought I heard a couple people join us, but maybe not.
I heard some people speak in the background or through
Okay.
the phone that we had a wrong number.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'm not sure what happened there.
So maybe that's who joined us as a wrong number.
He said we had a wrong number.
All right. And Marcia, if you're there, I think you heard the roll for the commission members, and we also have Dennis Donaldson is here and Andy Robinson.
Hi, this is Marcia.
Hi, Marcia. This is Mario. We were just checking if there was anybody else on the phone.
Great, okay.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
Great.
Am I coming through clearly?
Yes.
Okay, great.
And I don't know if you caught the roll call or not, but we've got Andy Stumpf, Morgan Johnston, myself, Pam Wojtek, Steve Wald, and among our guests, Andy Robinson and Dennis Donaldson. Okay?
Great, great. Sounds like you have welcome to everyone. Sounds like you have a full house. That's great.
Indeed. I think we're just missing a couple of folks, but certainly enough to move ourselves forward here. So we were just hearing the staff report, and I was just asking if there were any questions or comments for staff on that. No? Okay. Then let's move to our continuing business, a review and making a determination for the UC solar proposals. Scott, do you want to start us out? And
As I mentioned, we had put out the request for proposal for a community bulk solar purchase, and Marcia is going to give us a summary
Hello.
of the results of the bid process, and she's going to present some
Hello.
details on the 2 bidders, the 2 responders, and then we'll have
Hello.
opportunity for questions and discussion.
Hello.
Great.
Peter, can you hear
There
us?
does seem to be
now it sounds like
some
we have somebody.
interference here.
Yeah, this number keeps dialing me. I'm not sure why.
Oh, is this not Peter?
Hello? This is Joe Coyle. I think you have the wrong number.
Oh, sorry, Joe. Well, Marcia, if you're ready, do you want to?
I sure
Go
will.
ahead.
Yep, I will go ahead. So, as you all know, the RFP for the Urbana-Champaign Bulk Solar Program went out, and we had 2 proposals back from that process, and the team scored those proposals using a scoring sheet that was put together, and after discussing it and coming up with those scores, we've recommended Straight Up Solar as the recommended vendor, and we there were several reasons why we are recommending straight up solar. Some of those are that they provided several pricing options, including a finance option. They have quite a bit of experience, more experience than the other proposal. They've worked on bulk programs before, and so we just it was a unanimous recommendation, and all of us scored that particular vendor higher than the other. Another thing that we were really pleased about was that Straight Up Solar has offered to work with New Prairie Construction as a partner. And so I'll kind of stop there and then just ask if there are any questions.
Hello?
Hey, Peter.
Howdy.
Hey, Peter, we're just getting started with Marcia's presentation.
Great.
Go ahead, Marcia.
Great. Yeah, so I was just kind of reviewing that we had two different vendors who submitted proposals. We evaluated those with a rubric, and that rubric was actually generated from what was in the proposal, what we were looking for. And after all of us reviewed that and used the scoring sheet, it was unanimous that we are recommending Straight Up Solar as the recommended firm. And sort of the key things that came out of that, the key things that stood out were really their level of experience. And I just was going through sort of the advantages that we saw with Straight Up Solar serving in that role.
I have a question. So this is Morgan. I was wondering, I didn't get a chance to read through the proposals, and I know that we had asked for the option of a PPA option. Did they provide that as a option?
Yeah, so they gave several different sort of pricing finance options, and I'm just going to go through here and try to pull those out. They didn't necessarily give a PPA per se. The scenario that they described is a little bit different. I can try to pull that out for you.
While she's looking for that, I would characterize the financing they've set up or they proposed as it's a loan that's nearly PPA. So it's got a lot of the benefits of a PPA. It provides 15 years of O&M that's covered. So the issue with a PPA is you don't own the system until the end of the term. So the owner, someone else, the company, the installer, provides and performs all the maintenance. Well, you get that for 15 years with their financing. The financing is set at a level that is below the estimated or expected savings on your bill. Again, like a PPA. You actually own the system right from the get-go, which is different than a PPA and perhaps better. It's a third-party financing. It's a separate company that they work with. I have a document, but I got to switch it to computers. I'll try and grab it for you.
Yeah, and it's provided actually in the documentation that they gave to us, and it's a model that particular company feels is a better option for the leasing, or for not for the financing option. We actually have a call into Straight Up Solar to ask a couple of questions, clarifying questions about the financing options that they've provided. We hope to have sort of a clear breakdown of that to share with you.
Can you tell us more about their willingness to work with New Prairie Construction?
Yeah, so in their proposal, they explained that they do have offices that are in, I guess, Bloomington Normal and Swansea, and then also over in St. Louis, but that they would partner with New Prairie Construction to do some of the outreach and sales. They have proposed in their proposal that they would work with Wilcox Electric to do some of the electric work, and that they would be working with New Prairie Construction to do some of the sales and outreach.
Thank you.
Marcia, I've got the first graphic with the bullet points on the Dividend Solar loan summary in front of everyone now.
Okay, great.
Oh, another benefit. Sorry, another benefit that I didn't mention before, similar again to a PPA. Well, I'm not sure if it's similar to a PPA, but another benefit to this particular loan financing option is no lien on your home. So it is a loan, but the loan is only backed by the system, not your entire house. So there's not a lien on your house. When you go to sell your house, just like any other debt that you might owe, you can either write it into the sales contract and pass it on, or keep paying it after you sold the house, or take the proceeds from the sale of the house and pay off the loan. It is 100% financing, so 0 down. Also, I think a lot of the PPA agreements, because the other party, not the homeowner, owns the system for 10, 15, 20 years while you're in the contract term, they get the tax benefits, or they may choose to keep the tax benefits because they're the owner. With this, you are the owner from right from the get-go, so you get the 30% tax credit and any other particular tax credits or other benefits from ownership.
Yeah, this is Andrew. I was trying to figure out, so they 30%, they suggested that you put that towards your financing, I guess.
Yeah, it looks like what they've done is they've built that into the payback,
Okay.
the payment schedule. So they're expecting you to, it says within 18 months to take that and use it to pay back the loan.
Mm-hmm.
There's an option for that if you choose not to. The interest rate changes. It's kind of the
So
penalty
it's
there.
at the 18 months, then it goes up.
I did not see the interest rate, the normal interest rate for it. That may be negotiated based on the region, or maybe it's negotiated based on, credit worthiness of the person. I'm not sure.
You talked about 6% adder on it if you took the financing, so I'm not sure what that.
In the list of adders.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that must be okay. Great.
Are there other questions or comments? It's not entirely clear to me what is there any sort of a formal motion that's needed from this body, or we're more or less just making our comments and?
It's not necessary, but I think a sense of the group is fine. If people want to make a comment individually or vote, it's up to you guys. If you want to comment on what you think about the two proposals. I don't know. Did we mention the specifics on the pricing? Marcia, you want to touch on that again? Do you have those numbers in front of you? And I can also pull them up.
Yeah, you want to pull those up if you don't mind. I do have those in front of me too. So
You want to start with New Prairie Construction?
yeah, let's do that.
So easier one to view here. One of the ways that we asked bidders to respond was with multiple product offerings. So your cheapest product with a lower efficiency, and then your middle and your high, that kind of thing. And so you can see here offering one as a different brand module than offering two. This is New Prairie Construction, and there's a total system cost listed here of $425 per DC watt installed. Next one, $375. Next one, $335. In a PPA situation, you would see this line here, cost per kilowatt hour filled in, although I think that's just sort of a math thing. You could fill that in just for the sake of comparison. I'll switch over to straight up solar. Wrong one. You'll see that they've got three options as well, different brand products. $316 per watt. They also converted that into a PPA like per kilowatt hour cost. $347 per watt, 11 cents before 12 cents for this one, and $335 per watt, 12 cents per kilowatt hour. What we're discussing still with the vendor is how the vendor anticipates the sale of the solar renewable energy credits to play into the pricing. But looking at what they've presented here, 11 or 12 cents a kilowatt hour, that's what we pay now for grid. So our power supply price is 4.746 cents per kilowatt hour, but that doesn't include all the transmission fees and taxes and all that kind of thing. If you add all that up, it's about 12 cents per kilowatt hour. So it looks like at this point they've got a price that's basically the same as grid, only it's solar on your roof. Like I said, we're still discussing with the vendor what the implications are for the solar renewable energy credit. Possibly there's some more savings to be had there.
Yeah, and they did offer like a 1% decrease if you had more than a certain amount of installs, I guess.
Yeah, as if community uptake as a whole or programmatic uptake as a whole meets a couple of benchmarks that the vendor has set, there would be a 1% discount additional on top of all this. What we need to discuss is how mechanically how that would work. So if I had already paid for my system and then the community hits this benchmark and gets the 1% discount, do I get a check for that, or is only the additional people? So we'll work that out. I think those are just details that we need to write into the contract. The way I think it's worked in other places is these tiers, these benchmarks of uptake. People who have already installed or already paid, they get a check for that amount back in the mail.
So these prices are before the production tax credit is applied.
No, that's, I believe that is already taken into account here. Is that right, Marcia and Peter?
That's my understanding is that tax credit is included in that figure.
The federal tax credit, yes. The 30%.
Yes. Yes.
We're not having any expectations about any state rebates of any sort.
Right.
I did.
Actually,
Sorry,
if
Peter,
we're
go ahead.
talking about the federal tax credit, the cost per watt, I believe, is actually pre-tax credit. The way it breaks down on if you go into I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me at the moment. If you go into the proposals for the hypothetical systems,
Right.
it's got the cost breakdown, and it should have the cost breakdown, and then for, pre incentives, and then it shows you how the cost actually breaks down when the incentives are applied. So the way this typically works is it's, if we went with straight up solar, for example, you'd have a starting price of $3.16 per watt, and then an additional 30% after you took away the tax credit, and then whatever other incentives as well.
Oh, is that in the PDF that you're referring to, Peter?
I'm sorry, say again, Scott?
Was that in the PDF, the scenario you're referring to, rather than in the Excel spreadsheet?
Right. Yeah, I was referring to the hypothetical.
Okay, I've got it up here now. So here's the 314 per watt DC installed. Here's the 30% tax credit, so that brings the installed price down to $219 per watt. And is the incentives in later years, is that the expected value of the SRECs? Peter?
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand what you said.
No problem. The incentives in later years, 5,376, is that the expected value of the SRECs?
Yes, I believe so. So the way they calculate the cost per watt in the proposal, they don't factor in the incentives that you would get after the installation is complete. So it's everything that I've seen. If you're looking at something that contradicts this, please let me know. But from everything I've seen and interpreted, it's before the incentives. We'd start at the 316 per watt, and then after the incentives are applied, it gets down quite a bit. It takes away at least another 30% from the federal tax credit, and then more for the SREC. But it's projected over time. So when they do a bid on a project, they don't do a bid including those incentives. They just do a bid pre-incentive.
Now I see that the only other group bulk solar purchase program, solarized program in Illinois, Chicago, had a price of $349 per watt. So I suspect that was also before the 30% federal tax credit, as well as before SRECs, which were not as saleable at that time. There wasn't this big state purchase.
Right.
So all three of the particular product offerings from Straight Up Solar have a lower per watt install cost than what Chicago Solar was able to secure.
So for the, presuming that the incentives in later years is the first 5 years of SRECs, this looks like, I guess the question of how the SRECs apply to this is a good question. I know that you're pursuing that. But the 314 example is going to come down a lot, but people still have to have the $18,000 up front, and then they get the rebates to cover the difference unless they go with the payment plan.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So the 18. So in this scenario here, the 18,000 is paid to the installer. 30% tax credit comes later to the homeowner. The SRECs, I think the state will be paying them out actually over the course of 5 years. So what we need to discuss with the installer is whether we can move that up into the actual purchase price and have the installer collect the SRECs. We're not sure if they're going to be able to do that or not. That kind of changes the financial picture. That would mean that if the person's going to finance, say, they would be taking out a smaller loan right from the get-go. Another detail in this bid, they did provide pricing for commercial. I think they had a threshold of 20 kilowatts installed, but I think the pricing was per watt was cheaper than the residential. That makes sense, the volume. But I think I don't think a lot of other solarized programs have done that. They have had a commercial option, and that could be big. I mean, as we discussed in our last meeting, just a couple of 20 kilowatt commercial systems could uptake all the SRECs that a installer might have planned on.
Question: where was that 1% threshold? What's the goal from that? Is that in?
Do you remember what page that was, Andy?
I'm having a little bit of a hard time hearing you guys. I'm sorry if I'm not answering. Could you repeat that?
We're looking at what the uptake threshold was for the community to receive a 1% discount.
Okay.
It was
I think it was the other
100
document,
kilowatts
the other PDF.
capacity, and then 200 kilowatts capacity.
Yeah, 100 to 149 kW.
Okay, so at 100
was it 100 and then 150 and then 200?
Right. Yeah, 100, 150, and 250 were the different levels.
They also talked about 7.5% discount. Initially before they talked about the 1% discount. So
I'm not recalling the 7.5% off the top of my head.
I think that's the pricing they provide is 7.5%.
Oh, for the bulk price?
Yeah.
Okay. Just scroll by it. There it is again, yeah.
Some other details on Straight Up Solar. They have planned to use an electrician in Normal. As we mentioned, they've got a role for New Prairie construction and sales. They're very experienced. They're just got their B Corporation certification.
Well, I support moving forward with the Straight Up Solar as the preferred vendor for this program. I'm curious what our next steps beyond that are.
Well, actually, now that you've at least put a statement out, what is that? Does that reflect the sense of the group? Okay, I'm seeing a lot of yes. Okay.
One thing that I thought I would mention, Scott, could we pull up the other PDF, then go down to the page 39. Page 39 has the commercial scenario. I just thought it was interesting to look at. So the $277 per watt is already very cheap, very good price. Then there's the federal tax credit, and then it gets to $194 per watt, and then we have the SREC incentive, and then we have the MACRS depreciation, and it gets down to $5,000. I just wanted to double check. So $5,000 was so little, was so small, and so the MACRS depreciation is only if a business had, in a given year, had a $16,000 liability, I think. So that is just something, I mean, businesses know that kind of information, I guess. But I wanted to double check if you can do the MACRS depreciation and also the federal tax credit. And I wasn't positive about the federal tax credit in that scenario, so that'd be just something to double check.
Yeah.
Scott, I assume you heard that. I'm having a really hard time hearing, but if you'll make sure you take notes when we have that call tomorrow, we'll make sure to ask any questions that are for clarification.
Absolutely.
All right, then maybe just to go back to Morgan's question about, kind of what are the next steps?
So the next steps are all these questions that we have tonight and a couple others that we already had. We're going to be working with the responder to get some clarification on, and we'll write all of that into a contract. And I think we had a deadline. I don't remember what it is. Peter may chime in on the deadline, but we need to turn around a contract quickly. That'll give the installer the ability to go ahead and bid into the SREC market and secure some SRECs. And then after that, we can build up the program and announce it and start driving uptake.
Correct. For our timeline, we were looking at this Friday to have a signed contract. So we would ideally be able to answer all these questions tomorrow with the contractor, and then send them a draft contract, or send them basically we'll draft the contract and incorporate the changes, whatever changes we need to make, and include whatever details we need to include based on the conversation tonight and the conversation tomorrow, and then have that signed on Friday.
I had another question about, I can't remember which document it was that talked about some of the additional adder items. I was just going to see if we could just take a glance at that. Oh, there's another tab, yeah. And on the adder items, one of the things I was curious about is do we have a scenario for the different angles? The slope exceeding 30 degrees was one of the scenarios. Do we have a scenario for non-south facing, non-ideal roof scenario? I don't know if that has to be in the bid or not, or if that's just something they would discuss later or negotiate later or something like that.
Did you say if it's a non-south facing roof? Wouldn't the cost be the same? It was just the benefit would be different?
Correct. I think that's fair.
Well, not necessarily. So if there's an east-west roof, there are products geared toward that kind of that type of roof. But because you basically have to install solar for half the day and then install solar again for the other half of the day, that really increases your cost. So a non-south facing roof, if it were an east-west facing A-frame, that would be very different than a south facing A-frame where there's a south and north facing A-frame where you're only putting solar on the south facing roof. And then more specifically, if you're say you're in a cul-de-sac and you're not facing due south, that's a little different. But it's not quite the same as the east-west product.
Well, at this point, they don't have an adder for that, so presumably there wouldn't be an additional cost. But also presumably you wouldn't get a special type of product. You would get what they're already offering. So we can ask the installer if they want to have an adder for that, and we'll see what happens.
The chances, I mean, really what we're doing, and the beauty of this project is that we screen ideal sites. So the chances of somebody with an east-west A-frame roof participating is pretty low, because one of the characterizations of the site that we frame as ideal and perfect for the program, and really what we're shooting for in this program and our marketing and everything, is south-facing roofs. So while we could put it in as an adder, just so we can catch those customers who might be interested in doing that, largely I think it wouldn't. It just simply doesn't really apply.
Wait, I didn't catch it. While we could put it in as an adder, largely what?
I think it simply doesn't apply
It doesn't apply.
for the most part. For the most part.
So maybe if it can be added simply and still have a contract signed by Friday, then do, and if not, then don't. It's an idea.
I think it'd be fine to touch on that.
Other comments, feedback, suggestions, questions? All right, I think we're done with this agenda item. Thanks to all, and we will move on to...
Wait.
Sorry?
Just the one thing, Scott had sent an image to us
Oh,
Ah, yes.
That's right.
on the same agenda item.
Okay,
Tap it.
the logo.
Can I ask one other question while you're loading that image? I was curious. I'd forgotten it might have been in the bid from a local company, but I feel like one of the two bids I saw that maybe there was an adder, or maybe there was another additional item for microinverters. Do you guys recall if that was that in the New Prairie one? So that was not, there was not an item for that in this other, in the straight up solar.
I see it on the screen. Microinverters. It's at the bottom.
Yeah,
It's
at
row
the very
30 and
bottom.
31.
But that's...
Okay, so there's
so
that's an
there's-
adder.
okay.
Good, thank you.
Just a comment. We have a lot of people who are very interested in utilizing this program once it's available. Everyone that I have talked to who owns a house and has been thinking about solar is now holding their breath for when they can do it through this program. So hopefully that has good forecasting.
Peter, I've got the graphic in front of everyone now. Do you want to say a few words?
Sure. So, working on this with our designer, she brought up an important point, I think, and that's that when you Google UC Solar, the whole first page, for the most part, is University of California related projects and programs. So anticipating that folks will likely be Googling the program name, we should take into consideration the fact that we might want to name it something that's totally local and something that's not confusing in any way. So her suggestion was to change the program name to Solar Urbana Champaign or Solar Champaign Urbana, whichever is whichever you find more congenial. And so this is an adaptation of one of the most popular of the logos that she had created before. This is adapting it to that more localized name. I'd like to just say also that ultimately, whatever we select the name to be, I don't think it's going to have a huge impact on the program, and I don't think the logo itself will have a huge impact on the program. If we were starting a business, I would be much more inclined to spend a lot of time on getting the logo just right. But for the sake of launching the program, marketing it, getting all our ducks in a row, I think we should pick something and move forward, and not take too much time to really hone the logo more than is needed.
I think Solar Urbana-Champaign is fine, and I think the logo is very, very close. My comment about close is just I don't like that the little spikes coming off the moon are not all rounded. I'd like them all to be rounded. It's very minor. I'm not sure that half moon sun thing is actually rounded either, although that just might be my eyes right now.
Morgan, I thought you were going to question if University of California was some small state school somewhere that you hadn't heard of. Weren't worried about that.
Well, I think it's really important for it to be Urbana-Champaign because that works with my upbringing and with the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign.
Other comments on the logo or the name? All right. Are we ready for new business, of which we have none? Okay. Well, we don't have any new business, so how about announcements? Do we have any announcements?
I have an announcement. The Illinois Bike Summit is at the end of this month. It is Wednesday, October 28. It's at the iHotel, and community members can attend for $50 for the day. Students at the at campuses get $25. It is a really interesting program to spend a day learning about bicycle infrastructure, bicycle education, bicycle awareness, and the programs available in this state, and I encourage people to go and attend.
Other announcements? Steve, I'm shocked you're not bringing up the Prairie Rivers Network dinner coming up on the 6th.
That's true.
Didn't want to steal your thunder, but you know.
That's fine. A local nonprofit that's active in water quality issues is having their annual dinner November 6th, Friday, November 6th. And you can sign up to attend at prairieriversnetwork.org.
And I have an announcement for, the event is not local, but it is for the statewide chapter of the U.S. Green Building Council. There's an annual meeting and celebration up in Chicago on November 3rd, which is actually the date of our next meeting. I am actually going to be out of town for, well, actually almost all of that week. And so my other announcement is simply that Steve has graciously agreed to step up and chair for the November 3rd meeting. So if you have agenda items and so forth for that meeting, please direct them to Steve and Scott rather than me and Scott. Do we have other items, other announcements tonight? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? All right, we are adjourned.